Okay. So why don't we get the meeting started then? First item, any changes to the agenda? I should add, for those of you who don't know, I am not Susan O'Brien, I'm Mike O'Brien. I had to use my wife's computer. Okay, no changes to the agenda. Public comment period. Anyone like to speak to the board on any item not on tonight's agenda? Not sure if there's anyone from the public out there. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move on to the action on the consent agenda. We have a minor tip amendment.
Move to approve.
Second.
That Barb and was that Dan that seconded?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? What we're going to do is if you oppose, I'll ask anyone opposed, and if you don't say anything, I'll assume everyone's in favor. So anyone opposed to the motion? Anyone want to abstain? Don? Okay, then we'll assume that everyone's in favor except for Don, who abstained. Thank you. Approval of minutes of July 15th, 2020.
Move to
I'll
approve.
move. Second. This is Garrett.
Did you get who made the motion, Amy?
I got Garrett. Who moved to approve?
Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara.
So just as a reminder, because we're remote, if you make a motion or you want to talk, please let us know who you are so everyone knows. So is there any comments or corrections to the minutes?
No. Catherine.
Okay. Hearing none, then I would ask anyone who wants to vote no, please say so. Anyone want to abstain? Seeing none, I'll take it that all are in favor of the motion then, and it passes.
Megan
Okay.
abstained.
I'm sorry, Garrett, you abstained?
No, Megan did.
Oh, Megan
Yes.
did, I'm sorry.
Since I wasn't present, it doesn't
That's
matter
fine.
either way.
That's fine. I'm challenged trying to see everyone all at once, so just speak up. Okay,
I'm gonna
next item.
violate my alternate status and say something. Just because you weren't there doesn't mean that you have to abstain on approving the minutes.
I know.
Okay,
I'm aware. I feel that
that's fine, no problem. Okay, next item is racism is a public health emergency declaration. We have Mark Hughes from the Racial Justice Alliance with us tonight. Welcome, Mark. We appreciate you coming tonight to help us hopefully get a better understanding of the whole racial equity issue that's out there. And I'll throw it over to Charlie for more of an introduction and setup of this topic. Charlie?
Yeah, thanks. And Mark, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So I just, we've been talking about this a little bit in previous board meetings and at the executive committee. I did sign on to this declaration, feeling that it was very consistent with strategy 7 in our ECOS plan to address equity in our region. And I think as we were talking in a previous board meeting, it would be helpful to have some more background on where this declaration came from, the background, not just on the declaration, but also on systemic racism. And so Mark really worked a lot on this issue in the city of Burlington. We've been talking, Mark, I think pretty close to weekly for the last month or two. So I've really appreciated getting to know Mark better, and glad he could join us this meeting. And Mark, do you want me to pull up the declaration or anything, or let me know if you do? And let us know also if you're open to questions, if you have much to present, or if you want us to
Sure.
hold questions to the end, let us know.
Okay. That's great. Charlie, I appreciate you. I thank you for the invitation, and also greetings to everyone that's on the call. I am Mark Hughes, and I'm the executive director of a racial justice organization called Justice for All. And I'm also the coordinator for the Racial Justice Alliance here. And both of these organizations over the last 6 years have been doing quite a bit of work extensively, public policy, advocacy, outreach, community outreach and education, and so forth. So I'm an Iowa native. I've resided in Vermont for about 11 years. Most of my time has been in Washington County. I just arrived in Burlington over the last couple of years. I am a retired Army officer where I served in Europe the vast majority of time, as well as in southern part of the United States. I'm a father, a grandfather, brother, son, all that stuff. So I just wanted to make you familiar with myself, and what I'll do is I'll, during the course of this time, as I'm speaking to you, I'd love it to be conversational. That would be amazing if we could have a conversation. If I were you, I would not want to be talked at for the next hour, especially after a long hump. And the other piece is I really would love to just get a sense of who you are. And I've already taken a look at your meeting packet. You will find in your meeting packet the advisory note that we sent out, as well as the document that Charlie was talking about. But I was wondering if we could just do this in a different kind of way, because it's really awkward. If I could just maybe call upon you, and if you could just tell me, at the very highest level, as it would be indicated on the agenda or whatnot, or what, just who you are and what entity you represent. Is that fair enough, Charlie?
No, that'd be fine. And if you don't mind, I'll call on folks. There's a mix of staff and board members here, so I'm going to just include everybody. And I don't know how you're understanding, but I'm going to run through so folks can go in order. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Urban-Witham, and I work for CCRPC. I am taking minutes tonight for the meeting. It's my primary job, but I'm also very interested in hearing what you have to say, Mark. Thank you for being here.
Amy.
Taylor?
Sorry, camera's off because I've got a 2-year-old running around in the background. Taylor Newton, I'm a land use planner with CCRPC. And I'm primarily interested in learning more about, how my work writing zoning bylaws can get better in terms of making sure that there is equity in those regulations, and that we're writing regulations that aren't discriminatory.
Dan?
Thanks, Taylor. Good to meet you.
Dan, are you able?
Me or your Dan?
Dan Karen.
Dan, yeah. Okay. Hi, this is Dan, and I represent Essex Junction. Interested in hearing what you have to say about racial justice and the issues as they pertain to Vermont specifically, but even the nation as a whole. Thank you.
Hi, Dan.
Mike appearing as Susan O'Brien.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for coming. I'm Mike O'Brien. I represent the city of Winooski, born and raised here. Like you, Mark, I'm a father, a grandfather, a brother, an uncle, all that stuff. And having been born and raised in Winooski in Vermont, you know, we hear a lot about the racial justice and whatnot, and I'm interested in really getting an education, if you will, understanding of where other folks, especially folks of color, come from in terms of what's going on out there. So trying to understand the different perspectives, and that's what I'm hoping for, that this can all lead to, and what kind of a role RPC can play, if there is one. And I'm on the planning commission here in Winooski, and you know what we can do there. So again, thank you very much for coming tonight, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Bard?
Great hearing from you.
Hey, Mark, it's Bard Hill. I'm on the select board in Richmond, and our representative is CCRPC. My family goes back a long ways in Vermont, but I've also lived in a number of other states, including a suburb of Detroit in the 1960s. So a variety of perspectives. I'm interested in moving forward, not only in education and awareness, but how we can actively, both as a commission and a town, be more effectively anti-racist.
Megan?
Thanks. Good to meet you, Bard.
Hi, Mark. I'm Megan Emery, and I am on the City Council in South Burlington. And I am the alternate. I'm not usually attending these meetings. I'm here in the place of Chris Shaw, who is a former city councilor, longstanding member of this board. And I think, like other communities, our community has also passed resolutions in support of racial justice. And I am also here to learn what more can be done. Thank you.
Good to meet you, Megan.
Don?
Yeah, thanks. I'm Don Meals. I'm a resident of Burlington, and I am a commissioner at large representing environment and conservation. And I'm still learning, even at my advanced age.
Good to meet you.
Barbara?
I'm Barbara Elliott from the town of Huntington. I'm the town administrator, and one of the things we're particularly interested in as a small town is the things that we can be doing locally to advance the cause.
Marshall?
Good to meet you.
Hi, Mark. I'm Marshall Distel, transportation planner here with the CCRPC. Interested in hearing what you have to say, and also interested in hearing how we can be more equitable as an organization.
Jeff?
Good to meet you, Marshall.
Jeff? Carr?
I wasn't expecting to talk again. I'm Jeff Carr. I'm a recovering locally elected official from the town of Essex, but I'm the alternate tonight for the town outside the village. I grew up just north of New York City, which is a more significantly diverse population than Vermont, and looking to continue my education. And specifically, I'm interested in what you think an organization like ours, which is a municipal service organization in transportation and in other, public policy issues, can do to address some of the issues we've been hearing about. And I'm probably as advanced age as Don.
Elaine?
Hi, Mark. I'm Elaine Haney. I'm the chair of the Town of Essex Select Board. And normally I'm the alternate, and Jeff is the main person for us. It encompasses also Essex Junction. And our community is at the beginning stages of our conversation on racial equity and inclusion and policing. So we are just at the very beginning of starting that. We're going through training right now. And I would be interested in learning, I'm not sure if that tonight's the night, but at some point, examples of how municipalities can help dismantle systemic racism. I think conceptually we understand it's something, elected officials understand it's something we must do, but sometimes we struggle with what does that exactly mean? What kind of things can we do literally to make sure our town's policies and procedures are not perpetuating it?
Andy?
Hi, Mark. I'm Andy Monfrell from Burlington. I've been the rep for a while. I'm on the Planning Commission in Burlington right now, and I used to be on the City Council in Burlington. Really glad that you're here. For me, it's really just helping to be better educated in what we can do, because it's really difficult to know. So really welcome your being here and helping shed some light on that.
Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and I am a transportation manager with the Agency of Transportation, and I am the liaison to the CCRPC board. In my relationship to this topic, I've gotten quite a study in the last 4 or 5 years, as my goddaughter, who's now 18, is one of the co-founders of the Racial Justice Alliance at Montpelier High School and part of the group that raised the Black Lives Matter flag. So she's been a great source of information and lots of education, but like so many who grew up here in Vermont, she's helped me see that we all have even more to learn.
Thanks for that, Amy.
Brian?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Brian Davis. I'm one of the transportation planners at the Regional Planning Commission, and I grew up in rural Texas. So there's that kind of baggage that I bring to this, and I've been exploring racial justice more deeply the past year or two. So I've got, I'm very interested in my personal growth in this, and also in what I can bring to the organization and ensure that we are expelling systemic racism. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Wayne? Wayne, can you introduce yourself? Wayne, can you hear me? Wayne Howe?
Yes, I'm Wayne Howe. I'm the alternate rep from, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I'm the alternate rep for Jericho, and I'm here primarily with glasses on as a select board member. We've started a conversation in Jericho about racism. Elaine's comments about Essex is precisely where we are. We expect to continue to have a couple important and difficult conversations about racism in our eastern Chittenden County town, and am just looking for a framework that we might tap into. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Tony?
Hi, I'm Tony Miklas. I am the representative to CCRP from the town of Milton. I grew up, I was born in Michigan, but I've lived here pretty much all of my life. I'm on the Planning Commission in Milton. This particular topic is of extra interest to me because I have a potential future daughter-in-law that is a woman of color. I want to know what's really going on out there, and I want to know what kind of actions we can take, and see if there's a way that I can help her in some of the situations that she's had to deal with.
Thanks, Sharon.
Sharon?
Hi, Mark. I'm Sharon Murray. I'm a community planning consultant. I've worked with a lot of Vermont communities and municipalities in northern New England. I'm also done a little policy and legislative work in Montpelier and a former member of the Bolton Select Board. I'm here tonight as a representative of the town of Bolton on the Regional Commission. And I'm really interested in trying to find out how we can be more inclusive in our work, both as a professional planner and as a regional commissioner. So I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Bissonette. I'm representing Heinsberg, and like everyone else here, I'm here to listen and learn.
Emma?
Hey, Michael.
Hi there, I'm Emma Vaughn. I'm the communications manager here at the CCRPC. So I'm one of the main staff working on the our public participation plan. which is that principal document that guides our organization and involving the public in a meaningful way in our work. So I'm, really interested in learning how to continually learning how to increase and improve upon that work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie Murphy, who is experiencing internet connectivity issues, so I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
You're good.
I'm a member of the Chester Select Board, and I'm the representative to the CCRCP Board. As that role, I am originally from Western Massachusetts, but lived and grew up in a town that was quite diverse, Springfield, Massachusetts, but have been here in Vermont for more than 40 years. And like everyone else, I am really interested in learning how to become a better person in relationship to the many issues that our country is facing today, but most especially racial justice.
Eleni?
Thanks.
Hi, Mark. I'm Eleni Churchill. I'm the Transportation Program Manager at the CCRPC. And, my interest is learning more about racial justice, about systemic racism, and most importantly, how to use that knowledge to help us with the work that we do, especially in the transportation side of things.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Garrett?
Hello, Mark. Thank you for coming. Much appreciated. I am the representative from the most important town in Chittenden County, Buell's Gore. Well, wait a minute, it isn't even a town, it's a gore. That was a very small joke. Buell's Gore is only 25 people, so there isn't a lot of opportunity for any sort of diversity in the town of any type. However, living in Vermont was certainly one of the least diverse states in the country. But also having lived in areas that are far more diverse, interested to see what the best ways of dealing with all of this is for a place like Vermont. Well, I've never met anyone like that story, which I've heard over and over again for many years. That doesn't count, as you well know. So that's it. Thank you.
Catherine?
Yep. And let's hope we come back. It came back. I keep freezing up. I'm Catherine McMains. I'm part of the Jericho Select Board. I'm also vice chair of the Regional Planning Commission. And like Wayne said, we're in the process of trying to learn how to help our community. We have some wonderful activists, young people in the community that brought forward the proposal to paint a Black Lives Matter mural on one of our roads. And so it was an education both for us and the community, that kind of discussion, and we feel we need to learn more ourselves as a select board, be able to help our community to learn going forward as well.
Scott?
It's good to meet you.
Where is Scott doing town meeting TV, or Amy, do you know? I don't know, maybe he's not plugged in. Melanie?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mark. I'm Melanie Needle. I'm a senior planner at the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I'm staff. Issues of equity relate to my work at CCRPC related to energy efficiency. In particular, this year, we're trying to work on reaching out to new American populations to understand some of the energy efficiency and home safety issues that they face in rental housing. So this topic is of particular interest to me. Thank you for joining us.
Eric?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mark. Eric Wells, Town Manager in Williston. It's a little windy out here on the deck, but newly appointed to the CCRPC board last night to represent Williston, at least in the interim, as we work for a permanent representative. But happy to be here. Looking forward to discussion this evening. Thank you.
And someone there is caller number 2? Someone on the phone? Okay, and Regina?
Hi, sorry, just join you. Planning Program Manager for Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And sort of lead the organization on the non-transportation side, housing, land use, regional plan. And so I'm not sure there's anything there that equity issues don't come into play. So really looking forward to digging in way deeper on this topic. So yeah, thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Let me try one more time on caller 2. Is someone there on the phone? Okay, we'll move on. So over to you, Mark. Thanks.
Caller number 2. Caller number 2. You're creeping us out. So again, thank you for having me. Regina, can you please repeat your position? Regina Mahoney.
Planning Program Manager for CCRPC.
Okay. Thanks. So I just want to take a couple of minutes and tell you some more about me and also connect myself to you. And I think it's really important. First of all, it's obvious, you know, when I say I've only been in Vermont for 11 years, that yeah, I've been other places, and we can talk about those 17 states or 4 countries, or we could talk about the time that I've been here. I'd rather talk about the time that I've been here because, and I think this is really important to understand, is because there's Burlington and then there's Vermont, right? And I've come to understand, you know, and living in Chittenden County, especially during the time that I've spent in Williamstown, and also living in Woodbury, and the time that I've spent living in Cabot, that Vermont is different everywhere you go. It's just different. Every you know, you can't take what's going on in Jericho, for example, and necessarily just drag and drop that over to, say, for example, Franklin. So I get that. I also have a brother who lives in Franklin, actually, who lives right there on Lake, I guess they call it Carmine, big lake up there. So been around for a little while, and starting this work where I think the action started was as a cybersecurity analyst, which is what brought me back to Vermont. I was on a little bit of a hiatus because I left National Life Group, and what I did was I just began just this serial entrepreneurial adventure. And but as a cybersecurity guy, I took a step back while I was living in Cabot, and then Michael Brown was killed in 2014. And it was at that point where I started to pay closer attention to, you know, what was going on. In fact, I was a little bit confused. And I think it was the recovering Republican in me that said, you know, what the hell is going on? And I started to try to make sense of it. And I think this story is important for the relationship that I'm developing with you, because I'd like you to understand where I'm coming from and some of the things that I've experienced that led up to the point that we would make such a decision to start doing work, saying things like, racism is a, citywide emergency. So my immediate response was, I thought the civil rights era had taken care of this. What is going on? So immediate research, a lot of digging, national best practices, standards, which led to wanting to just, tell other people about what I was discovering. And it was this natural progression, community thing that happened. And then I wanted to just talk to other folks that didn't think like me. So what I started to do is just, reach out to, select board members, the mayor, the police, anybody who'd listen, really. And just start having conversations, saying, well, this is what I've learned. This is what I think. This is what I see. What do you think? Well, how do you operate? Well, how does that work? Well, what do you think about what they think? So then I found myself becoming a conduit to folks in the community, from folks in the community to elected and appointed officials and so forth. And ultimately found out that it seemed like it might be a good idea to pursue a legislative agenda, which resulted in the two most prolific racial justice legislative policies on the books in Vermont, which is Act 54 in 2017, racial disparities in the criminal and juvenile justice system advisory panel, which an offshoot led to this additional work by the Attorney General and the Human Rights Commission, referred to as the Attorney General and Human Rights Commission's Task Force on Act 54, which reported out on racial disparities in all systems of state government. So housing, education, employment, health services, access, economic development. To report, most of you are sitting in front of your computer. You could probably just open another window, just do a little Google, just Act 54, 2017, HRC and AG, Task Force, Vermont, send, boom, the report will come back. So that report, what it will show you is that it'll show you that that we have already had this conversation, that there are indeed racial disparities across all systems of state government. And who authored that report? The Assistant Attorney General David Scher, under Attorney General T.J. Donovan's leadership, as well as former Human Rights Commission Executive Director Karen Richards, prior to Boer Yang's taking her position. So there it is. So the next year, and it wasn't quite, just so you know, we didn't quite get what we wanted. What we were really looking for was just some transparent and effective oversight of law enforcement, just to make sure that what they were doing was essentially, if you're tasked with collecting data, if there is a fair and impartial policing policy, if there is some type of training that you must endeavor, this is all Title 20, 2366, then who sees to it that happens? In fact, what is the oversight apparatus? And what do we do with alleged misconduct with police officers in terms of independent prosecutorial authorities or independent investigations? And further, I know it's kind of went on, but the question is who makes sure? It's not a matter of saying it's not necessarily getting done, because some are doing it, some are not. We always know that, right? Just like having kids. But who makes sure everybody's doing it? Because it's not fair that the folks who do it are doing it and folks who are not, and they're not held accountable. So that's what this original plan was, and we got an incredible amount of pushback. So we got what we got, the advisory panel, but what came from that was this other piece, which was this task force that I told you about, which produced something that was unexpected, and that was the report on disparities across all systems. The next year, what we wanted to do is we wanted to go in and take a look at, well, what do we do about this thing? So we stopped speaking about it in terms of disparities, which are outcomes and started speaking about it in terms of root causes, which are systemic racism. So, so what we did was we went in after what we refer to as the Systemic Racism Mitigation Commission. So I went in and talked to Dick Sears and Tim Ash to have this conversation with him at the beginning of the session. And they said, we already have a tool to deal with racism. It's called the Human Rights Commission. And I said, well, what about systemic racism? So they kind of looked at me like a Martian. And I said, that's overt racism. Overt racism is intentional. It's discriminatory practices. It's directed at folks to deprive them of their civil liberties. Systemic racism is a network. It's enmeshed. It's complex, and it's socioeconomic, and it creates policies, and it ingrains them within our the fabric of our society. So the outcome is always it produces adverse impact on Black and brown folks economically, and it always advances white people. This is how the nation was built from 1619, and we could stop in 1865 and talk about those 12 years where we actually had a perfect project. But after that collapse, we know that slavery, that convict leasing, that sharecropping, that the Jim Crow South occurred, that lynching, that all of that occurred. We understand hundreds and hundreds of massacres that happened across the turn of the century with impunity across to include Black Wall Street, Rosewood, Wilmington, and so forth. We understand that the pressure cooker busted in the 60s, and there was an uprising because they just couldn't take it anymore. And we used our own military, our own FBI against our own citizens. We killed many. We assassinated our own president again, as well as his brother. Many civil rights leaders, incarcerated the rest. And many of them are still out of the country. We understand that the war on drugs started then. We understand redlining. We understand the white GI Bill. We understand the white New Deal. We understand how generational wealth was created. We understand how wealth was actually deprived. We understand that, as we finally began to turn the corner over 50 years later, that there were some hecklers in the crowd, and some of them were birthers, and some of them were, I don't know, your Glenn Becks and maybe your Rush Limbaughs of the world. But we also understand that there was a huge backlash, a huge upsurge in white supremacy in the maybe around 2008, 2010, and it continued to this day. And we also understand that the chief of the birthers are the president, is the president of the United States today. And this has been a contiguous story, and there has been a consistent suppression of political and economic power and wealth of Black people since 1619, when the first Black feet touched soil and they were traded as a slave. Our Constitution was written that way. It's who we are. We're America. So those are very hard things to come to terms with when we're not talking about it over a period of time. But this is the conversation that came out of the New York Times last year. The 1619 Project, remember? This is that conversation. This is the conversation that's been lingering throughout the entire time. So these are the things I began to come to understand. No, we didn't get the systemic racism mitigation, independent commission with subpoena authority, and no, we didn't, get this independent commission that would really be charged with actually having the power to do the work to make sure that there was a radical redistribution of political and economic power, that folks were being held accountable, and that we were actually making progress. Of course, we didn't get that. Power never cedes power. But what we did get is we got a racial equity executive director, and her name is Tutana Davis. She doesn't have a staff yet, but we're still fighting for that. She's not independent because she serves at the pleasure of the governor. But we're still working on it. We're not completely pleased with the progress, but we're not 100% disappointed either, because this has been a 401-year-old fight. So I told you all of that to tell you this is that, yes, you know, we continue with legislative agenda. There's still policy that's moving forward through the legislature. Yes, you know, after I moved to Burlington, we did come into the city, and yes, we created a similar position at the citywide level here in Burlington, and she actually has 2 folks that will be reporting to her because we fought for that and won. Yes, we did move past a reparations task force resolution in Burlington, whereby there will be a task force appointed to examine the implications of Burlington's role in slavery and talk about what an apology looks like and maybe even what a reparative process looks like. Some people saw stopping stones that just happened over this last week, where we honored a couple of slaves right there at the ski rack in Burlington. So we know it's a real thing, and you'll see those stopping stones going in. This is not our agenda, but what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get you to see this is all coming together here in Burlington. And yeah, Burlington is another state, but it's, you know, if they're doing some cool stuff, you might want to check it out and see what's going on over here. And yes, Operation Phoenix in Burlington, it does not just speak to redirecting, restructuring the so-called public safety apparatus. And I say so-called because we always have to ask ourselves who's safe and who's not. But the thing here is that this plan goes far beyond that, because there's a strategy whereby in addition to that, there's a restructuring of the racial inclusion, racial equity, inclusion, and belonging in office rather. In addition, a cultural empowerment initiative that's going to be implemented in the community that will have community centers, youth activity centers, economic development opportunities, programming for adult basic education. And you see where we're going with this. There's another piece to community, to addressing systemic racism, because again, we must shift political and economic power. And what that means is that every single one of us in the work that we do, whether it is the policies that we promulgate or the ones that we administer, whether it is the funding that we get from the state or the funding that we get from the federal government, the programs that we administer, the question is to what extent does it help economically or politically white people? And to what extent does it help or hurt economically or politically Black people? And what is that disparity? So that is kind of the fabric of what it is we're dealing with. It is incredibly difficult to dismantle, because the policies themselves that actually administer the funds that we actually literally live and survive by as organizations and as agencies, what you'll come to see and what you'll come to understand the closer you look at them and the more you think about it is that they're intrinsically racist in nature, which is why the median wealth of a Black family today is 1/13 the median wealth of a white family today in the United States of America, the land of the free, in the home of the brave. And we cannot fix that with 5 lifetimes of honest work. And every time there is a major crisis, I don't know, like the one going on right now, or Great Recession, or 9/11, and they just keep happening, it widens. And what we haven't seen is the result of this current crisis, because the 1/13 is pre-COVID. So there's a big challenge here. And that kind of leads me into, in the last 10 or so minutes with you, is to be able to start a conversation with you. It's more of a continuation of a conversation with Charlie. He's probably ready to go to sleep, because we've had much of this conversation and we've covered a lot. But before I do that, I would like to, I told you at the beginning I wanted to have a conversation with you, and nobody's interrupted me yet. and I don't know whether it's you're polite or nobody just has anything to say. I wish you weren't so polite. And trust me, it doesn't make me nervous. I'll just keep going. But the thing is that I don't feel it's that effective, because I really would like to continue the conversation. So I'm gonna pause there for a minute, and then what I can do is when I wrap up, this is kind of unorthodox. I didn't take any notes, and you see me, I'm not really looking at any notes. But I think the best thing I can do for you is kind of give you that kind of background, because I think it's helpful. I really do. I hope it is. And I'm thinking that towards the end here, I can go full circle and come back to where we started. Is why are we here? And maybe we can agree that perhaps we can follow on with a conversation, or maybe somebody can flag me or give me a call. Charlie and I are going to continue to talk as well. But Mike, I see you lit up. Were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. You're on a great roll.
Come on.
What's that?
I said, come on, interrupt me, please.
Okay. Now you presented a lot of stuff to me that was new that I'd never heard of. Shame on me or whatever. But I just want to get back to when we talked about this. One of the things that I'd like to understand better, or a couple of things, are just the where the term Black Lives Matter came from. Because quite honestly, when I first heard that, even now, the thought is, well, all lives matter. So, but I think I've kind of read and heard that folks of color especially look at it in a broader sense than just Black Lives Matter. So I don't know if you can give us some kind of background on where that term came from and what the meaning, what's intended to mean, so that we can, at least I can better understand that part of it.
I like that question, because what I think the best way I've ever heard anybody explain that to me was there was a description given, there was a explanation given that this guy says, okay, there's a house on fire in your neighborhood, and all of the whole local, all of the fire departments roll in. That house is yours. It's on fire, blazing. And all of the fire engines, they roll in, and they spray the whole neighborhood. And they're just spraying the whole neighborhood, and they're spraying the whole neighborhood. So eventually, after all of the other houses are drenched, maybe yours might go out. The point here is there's a house on fire, and if you roll the fire department in, and there's a house on fire, put the house on fire that's out. Put the house out that's on fire. So just to kind of bring that full circle is that, kind of from the explanation that I gave you in terms of how Black bodies in this nation have been regarded throughout all history, from 1619 to current day, George Floyd, I could keep naming them because there's more after that. I think it was back around, now this is the history piece that you asked about. I think it was back around 2013 when Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman in Florida, initially with impunity. Again, another situation where a Black person was killed with impunity. Remember I told you about the hundreds of instances where massacres happened across the United States somewhere between 1925 and 1930? Those are Black bodies with impunity. And the list goes on, but it's always with impunity. So I think at that point, there was a couple of young ladies who came up with a hashtag and said we should just say it. Black lives matter. And I think the reason, to me anyway, that it seems like they were saying that is it doesn't seem as though the actions of many people in this nation historically have indicated as such. I mean, why is it that we have the median wealth, the median wealth of a Black family is 1/13 that of a white family? Is it because they're just intrinsically and inherently just less smart or less able? You know, with all of these, as I told you, this Act 54 report that I told you about, and this is the way I can bring it home to you, Mike. This Act 54 report, I hope you pulled it down. Why is it that in housing, education, employment, health services access, economic development, and the so-called justice system, that at every single front, in every single instance, there are racial disparities, whereas Black people are less? Somehow or another, they get the short end of the stick across every single system. Why is it that, now watch this, this is that was kind of rhetorical, but this is that answer. Why is it that it seems that Black lives don't matter? So it seems logical to many Black people to say Black lives is kind of like a, hey, hello, wake up, look at us. Look at all of this stuff that's going on around us. Did you know that we're dying at 8 times the rate of, or we're contracting COVID at 8 times the rate as white people in this state? Did you know that we're getting stopped at 3 times the rate as white people in this state? Did you know that 50% of the time I go to rent an apartment that I'm discriminated against? So there's so many instances to the extent where when white people pretend like it doesn't exist, it seems that every now and then you might just want to tap one of them on the shoulder and say, hey buddy, hey Mike, Black lives matter. So when you get a response from somebody who turns around to a person experiencing all of that, who says, all lives matter, it doesn't come off very well to a person who sees every day that by every indication societally, that is just not true. So I think that's where it came from. And I think that's what it's about. I hope that helps, and I hope it helps the rest of the group.
That's not me. I know Barb wants to jump in.
So just a comment. How long did slavery last? Something like 250 years? During that 250 years, a Black slave or a slave owner could do whatever he wanted with his Black slave, including killing them. So the body of the Black person throughout slavery was with impunity. The white person, the white slave owner, could do whatever they wanted, kill, rape, whatever. And then the history after that, if you don't know this history, it's like Black Wall Street. It's pretty striking. I will say, I did not learn this stuff in school. And so part of the history is really lost. I'm most of the way through a book called Caste, C-A-S-T-E. I would encourage everybody here to read that book, because it's a combination of how did things happen and why do they happen and why do they continue. And actually it gave me insight into traveling in rural Vermont. Why would some white family living in a beaten down trailer put up a sign for Trump and Pence? It makes no sense. It would seem to argue against their social interests. But the caste system and racism helps to explain. It's a sort of elegant explanation of why some of the most intransigent racism is among white people of low income in rural areas. It's pretty striking. I encourage you all to read it. And the data is really striking, from income, assets, 6% of the population of Minnesota is Black. 19% of deaths of COVID are Black people. So if you turn around, you said it was people of your color, you'd probably notice that there was something askew here, that something was wrong. And I think the challenge that I find is how do I, my town, our state, move from being aware of racism and its effect going back hundreds of years, and what do we do about it now? So to me, that's the how do we turn the curve? How do we deal with the social determinants of health? How do we deal with the social determinants of wealth? And I think that's what we as a planning commission might start to contemplate as we do alleviating like traffic issues. How do we deal with this issue? And I think it'll be a long-term and complex challenge to address.
Yeah, indeed. I want to take just other comments. I see Elaine there as well. Thank you so much for that, Bart. Thank you, Mike, as well. Elaine?
Thanks, Mark, and thank you for your really passionate comments, instruction. I wanted to share a book that was recommended to me. I don't know if you can see it. This was recommended to me recently, The Color of Law. And it might be.
That was in the mayor's book club last year.
Oh, okay. So this is a story about redlining and how entire sections of communities were labeled as uninsurable because if Black families would move in and the white families' property values would go down, and this was government sanctioned practice throughout the country. And I think our organization would benefit from reading this because this is an example of where it occurs in our work and how it touches on our work. So this might be something that CCRPC as a group, as a board, we might all want to read together and discuss.
I appreciate that, Elaine. And I have some other resources, and we can, if it's okay with Charlie and let me see, who was the other boss here? It was somebody, I think it was Catherine is the vice, right? So if it's okay with Charlie and Catherine, I'm always happy to come back as well, and we can talk some more. I would say that, like I said, there are a number of resources that I will share with you, and I'm glad to do so. I want to just in the last few minutes, just tell you why I came and kind of what we're doing. So in Burlington, and I think it's a good idea for me before I go on, just to let you know that, look, the work that we are doing here and across the state, our legislators, our select boards, our city councils, our commissions, our schools, and so forth, our families. At this time, which really feels like a time of national reckoning, racial reckoning right now with everything that's going on, it's probably pretty easy to kind of get a little nervous about it. I think everybody is probably justifiably, a little bit shaken up. And so I just want to let you know that the work that I've been doing, and I told you I was in Central Vermont for a little while before this. All of that stuff, the policy that we were talking about, and all of the progress that were made. Look, this is a 94.5% white state, and I can assure you, 98% of the work that's gone in to moving us to where we are, in terms of those policies and all of this work that's going on, has been white people. and the reason why I say that, and it's really important to embrace, is that I've had this conversation 1,000 times, and I know the difficulties that folks are having and struggling with some of this. You know, I'll just a little quick anecdote. Buddy of mine, Jewish guy, his name is Steve Strauss, looks at me and says, "I'm going to be Christian," and I was like, "I got nothing to do with that." He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I went to your daughter's bar mitzvah. I know Marcy, his wife. I know your parents. I know your life. I know how you're living, and I won't have anything to do with turning that upside down." Now, I use that as an analogy, but what I'm getting at here is that in some cases, in many cases, this will turn your life upside down, what we're talking about. And the truth is that there's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot of stuff that they didn't teach us in school. And there's a lot of things that are happening here that have been right in front of us, and we never even known it. And yes, there's a lot of ways in which many of us have been privileged and not even known it. And there's a lot of ways, in fact, those of us have been on the opposite side of the scale and didn't know it. Because I was kind of under the impression that this was like a myth, you know, like poof, you know, for years and years. Somebody tried to convince me of this about 20 years ago, and I told them to get out of my face, you know. But that you can't do anything with the numbers. You can't really do anything with the facts, and you can't really do anything with the reality if you really dig down, like Bard was saying, and start taking a look at the history of who we are as a nation, the real history, and really start unpacking that. So what? How do we do this? How do we turn the corner, and how do we address this? You know, what we decided in Burlington is we were going to, you know, take a multifaceted approach, but that's Burlington. You know, there's a number of things that we're doing here in Burlington. We've reached out. We said there's an emergency. We wanted it to be broader. You know, there is, if you look in your packets, please, you don't have to necessarily need to do it right now, but there are some really constructive high-level points. I think there's a 10-point recommendation plan that I put in there. And if as you begin to look through those points, you know, what you'll begin to see is you'll begin to see some kind of programmatic approach. Far too often have we said, well, you know, all we got to do is go in and just hire some Black people, and then we'll be good, right? Problem solved. But the truth is that it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I'm looking for that packet as I'm talking to you. Could you just pull it up, please?
I can do that.
So there's a number of things that actually have to be happening at the same time, and they need to be happening together, and they need to be happening over a period of time, because it takes a lot to go in and unpack this. You know, one of the things that we talked about, you know, is this, you know, this programmatic approach. We talk about assigning responsibilities, and then this is again from the Alliance, you know, assigning responsibilities, and that is not just and also staffing. What that means is you know, whether it's a part of a head count or a full head count or something like that, folks being accountable, folks having resources. What are the main resources that are required here? This conversation starts and stops with data and political and economic power. So data analytics, policy, and training. Those are some of the three things that you're going to always be coming back to. We'll have more conversations here. So that kind of goes to point 3. You know, you see in point 4 this review of practices, collecting high impact, high discretion data. You know, what folks are doing across our organizations and in our communities and who are providing services is they're always making decisions. And I'm sure everybody's heard about bias, but folks are making decisions, and there are high impact decisions that are highly discretionary. So we want to kind of flag those and maybe keep track of those data, those racially disaggregated data in those areas, creating data dashboards that are representative of those areas, implementing fairness and diversity policies, and conducting initial and ongoing systemic racism mitigation training. These are some of the things that Charlie and I have already been talking about. Reviewing, not making a decision to hire somebody, but review the practices that you use in order to do so in conjunction with all of these other things, as well as appointment processes and promotion processes, and also holding folks accountable at the end of the day. Thanks, Charlie. I'm done with that. So what I will do is I will I'll just give you just a little bit of homework, and I'll follow back up with Charlie, and hopefully I haven't like just completely rocked the boat and everybody just goes up in arms and just burns it all down. I hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to you again. I'll know soon enough, because Charlie will probably tell me never to come back if that's the case, or worse yet, he'll probably just stop talking to me altogether, and I just thought I was making a friend. Here's your assignment. Oh, Megan, sorry.
Thank you, Mark. I was curious what kind of data you would recommend that we collect and review. I don't know if you have a model or some kind of, template.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, yeah, I appreciate that. The question is, what kind of data do we collect? So that's one of the things that it would require me to circle around. In the interest of time, I'm gonna go back and say something that I just said, and I'm gonna ask you to let it sink in. High impact, high discretion, racially disaggregated data. What does that mean, Mark? I'm glad you asked. So what that means is when if you go in and let's just say, I want to use law enforcement as an example, just because even though they get picked on a lot, they actually do what we're talking about best. Okay, what they're able to do is you hear it all of the time. It just goes by you because it's starting to become a big blur. Race traffic stop data. What the heck is that? Did you stop him or her? Did you search them? Did you cite them? Did you arrest them? So those are high impact, high discretion decision points. And the service that law enforcement officers provide, when you look at the spectrum of services in terms of a race traffic stop and the interaction that they may have with an individual, what you discover very quickly is that law enforcement officer is making decisions, right? He's making decisions. He or she is making decisions. And some of those decisions are very, very impactful. Did you use force? Very, very impactful. Incredibly high discretion. They call it Rule 3. And that is to say, that law enforcement officer actually makes those decisions on an individual basis and very transactional, okay? Now, what we see being reported out is the racially disaggregated data in those decisions. When you see Stephanie Segueno release a report, or you saw the VSP report. So that, Megan, is an example. So of course, this is going to depend upon your business processes within your particular business area, your organization, your agency, the services that you provide, how within the delivery of those services, what are the high impact decisions that your people make or that you make on a regular basis, and that are deeply informed by discretion, that are where they are highly discretionary and informed rather, of course, by bias. And what are the racially disaggregated data that you would be able to manually collect in those areas? Not to prove that there's an issue, but just to be able to inform your policy-making decision, as well as to determine your trends. Okay, does that help?
Well, I'm familiar with the police data that we do.
Mm-hmm.
I would be more curious if you have ideas for tracking economic data, housing data, things like this. I don't know if.
So again, there are probably 10 disciplines on this call right now, at least, and I am familiar with some models. I do see data being tracked in various areas. I wouldn't be able to comport that to your specific particular situation right now, mostly because I don't know it, and in the interest of time, since I should have been gone 4 minutes ago, it'd probably be best for us to circle back around and have that conversation. But I was just giving the law enforcement example just to be able to really illustrate what does it really mean when you say high impact, high discretion, and then racially disaggregated. Because that right there, it tells the story of what it is that it's kind of how you get to understanding that there are disparities or that you don't. So I want to thank you. And here's the homework. Was there any, Megan, did that help at all?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I gotta get out of here because Charlie's gonna have my head. So I'm going to just encourage you to just type this into your computer or into your browser right now. It is as, second word is seen, SCENE, as seen on radio, as seen on radio. And then space, and then type in seeing white, seeing, SEEING, white. The only thing I'm going to ask each of you to do is just one small favor, okay? Just listen to the first episode of this podcast. Just one, please. Just listen to one. And Charlie's going to give you my email address. If you have any comment on it, or if you just want to tell me to just stop the world and let me off or whatever, that's fine too. But listen to just one. And please, if you could, send me an email. Send me an email and say, hey, Mark, you suck, or hey, Mark, thanks for stopping in, or please don't ever come back, or whatever but send me an email. Charlie will give you that. I appreciate your time tonight. I appreciate your interest. I also appreciate, just the conversation and the direction that it's going. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to get out of your meeting. Okay.
Mark, before you do, this is Mike again. I want to thank you again for coming, and
sure,
we would love to have you stay in touch with us and use you as a resource, and have you back as we go through this. Like I said, we're having been born and raised here in Vermont, this for basically my whole life, racial issues were something that happened in other parts of the country, but they're here now. And as you know, in Winooski, where I live, we're probably the most diverse city in the state. And so it's an important item that we have to get our hands around and try to figure out how we can start making a difference and make things happen, rather than you referenced like the 1960s. You go back and watch TV shows or newscasts from the 60s, we're talking about the same stuff. So how do we move forward and answer the question so that our future generations aren't 50 years from now saying those idiots back in the 2020s were talking about it like they did in the 60s. They did nothing. They talked about it but did nothing. It's nice to have sound bites and whatnot, but what can we do to make something really happen?
I've got some ideas, and Mike, I appreciate the fact that you live in Winooski, and because I can walk there from here on Riverside, and I can meet you over at Sneakers, and we can talk some more about that.
I also wanted to jump in because I know Catherine's trying to kick me out of the chairmanship, but I wanted to exercise my power.
Mark, will you also? This is going to take a long time process anyway.
Charlie, make them stop.
Charlie?
No, go ahead. Catherine, were you going to say something?
No, I just said this process is going to take a very long time. Because
it took 401 years to get here, So I mean, I think that you'd be surprised. So I think we can, with a few willing folks, and also a little humor and some good pasta, I think we'll be fine.
Well, it does feel different because I lived, I didn't know that Bard did, but I lived downriver from Detroit in the 60s, and I was going to Michigan State at the time, going through Detroit when it was burning. And so, I mean, it's just, this feels different. I mean, there was a lot of angst then and trying to make things happen, but I think there are more people much more interested in it now rather than just, certain groups of activists.
I see that. I definitely see that, and I appreciate that. And just as a little side note, and I see Barbara's lit up and Don's lit up and Bart and Elaine. So Charlie, you can stop them whenever you want. But I did want to make a quick note on what was happening. And what I'll do is I will give somebody a gift to be determined if somebody can tell me the right answer to this is what was happening in Burlington, what was happening in Vermont, what was happening in Vermont during the time that Catherine just mentioned. What was the big deal in Vermont during the time when she was walking through Detroit and it was on fire? Bard?
Cakewalk?
That was part of it. What else was that? You're not quite there. I mean, what major thing was happening in Vermont during that? What major thing that has resided to this very day? It was the biggest deal that was going on when Catherine was walking through the streets of. This is telling. Is she's walking through the streets of. What is it?
Reapportionment?
That happens every 4 years or something like that?
No, there was a big reapportionment that changed the makeup of the State House significantly.
That might be true, but that wasn't what I was looking for. I give one more guess and then I'm going to tell you, and it's going to blow your mind.
Act 250.
My wife just said it loud. I think you heard her. Did you say that? Who said that? Who said that? Did Charlie say that? Charlie, you weren't supposed to play. Yeah, it's Act 250. Land use. After 103 years of a Republican governor, Phil Hoff came in the Irisburg affair. You should take a note of that if you don't know what it is. The Irisburg affair, woman. The Irisburg affair was. You should look that up yourself. I'm not giving you the homework on that. As well as this program where they were bringing Black youth in from New York. They basically ran Phil Hoff out of here. Okay, this is what was going on in Vermont. And 50 years ago, what happened was they passed Act 250. Now, just process that. I'm going to leave you with that. Think about that. Think about land use. Think about land ownership of Black people in this state. Think about wealth of Black people in this state or the absence thereof. Think about housing that Black people have in this state or the lack thereof. Farmers that are Black in this state or the lack thereof. Think about how all of that goes together while the nation was burning down. Act 250 was the most important thing here. Why? Why? To keep the, to keep from being Jersey? Gotta go. I really appreciate the time, Charlie. I sure do appreciate all of you, and I look forward to coming back and joining you again.
Thank you
very much. Thank you, Mark. I look forward to hearing from you.
We'll follow up.
Sneakers, Mike. Sneakers. Send me a note. We'll be at Sneakers.
Okay. I guess Mark has left us.
Poof, he's out.
He's out. Any kind of wrap? Bard, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Charlie, just a final quick comment. I think Megan asked a question about the data, and I've looked a lot at this, and most of the data doesn't exist. And here's the problem. A lot of the data sources are samples, like US Census, ACS, things like that. They do samples. Anything that results with a value under 11 is hidden. And for most of the measures we're talking about with a small population, if you didn't create the data in your town, it's a lot of it is just buried. And many data sources like our adult protective services, you know, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of older adults, they don't even collect the race of either the victim or the offender. So data is really sparse at a useful level, especially when you get to small towns like Richmond size, you know, 4,200, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, so we will, you know, obviously follow up on that conversation. That was a lot, you know, throw it in the deep end, and I'll share the thank you, Megan, for sharing the link to the podcasts that he asked us to do his homework. I'll send an email to you all with his email and the link to that podcast, so you can follow up on that. And thank you all for your attention and questions on that. That was good. I appreciate it.
Great. Before we move on, anyone else have anything they want to throw in?
Charlie, Mark mentioned a resource list. Can you send that out to us if it's something that he has?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's something that he has. I'll ask him about that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Or if it's something that's kind of under development. We've also, Emma and Brian have also been pulling together things that, you know, we've seen or they've seen internally. Some of the things we've been sharing with staff, like the Color of Law book, Elaine, you know, a bunch of staff have read that. And, you know, we've had some conversations. So we're also doing some more, you know, learning as a staff as well. But we'll share some of that. You know, it can get quickly overwhelming. So part of we're trying to figure out how to eat the elephant here.
Right.
You know, so, but stay tuned. Yeah, we'll share things as we go for sure.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess I'd add, if anyone has any comments, suggestions, whatever about tonight or moving forward, please share them with Charlie, and we'll take them up. All right. Next item, building homes together update. Charlie, are you going to do this? I don't see Regina here anymore, or Melanie.
Yeah, Regina wasn't able to stick around. Melanie will do this presentation. And Melanie, are you able to share your screen, or do I need to enable that?
Sorry, I'm here. You need to make me a co-presenter.
You are.
Okay.
And you know, and we thought this was a little bit of an interesting follow-up, you know, to talk about what's been happening with the Building Homes Together campaign after Mark just left us with the land use word. And just for context, you remember 4 years ago or so, we started a campaign to try to build 3,500 homes in 5 years. And so here's the update from Melanie.
Okay, hi, sorry. Hi, everybody. This is the Building Homes Together update. The Building Homes Together campaign has been going on. We're in our 4th year. The Building Homes Together campaign is a partnership with us, CCRPC, the Champlain Housing Trust, Evernorth, which is formerly Housing Vermont. And so this presentation will focus on what we're seeing in this 4th year, as well as where we are with the eco strategy number 2, which is our land use strategy. And I will go over that in more detail. And it's not changing. Let's try. Do you guys see the slides advancing?
No, we're on the title slide.
Let's see. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. I wasn't pressing hard enough, I guess. So housing in Chittenden County, our community is suffering from a housing shortage, and it shows up in a variety of ways. Employers are having a difficult time hiring. More than 25% of homeowners and 50% of renters are cost burdened meaning they pay more than 30% of their income towards housing. Also, households are buying homes further away from their jobs to find houses that are more affordable. So that's causing more greenhouse gas emissions and transportation impacts. Obviously, that hasn't been a huge issue in the time of COVID. Also, there aren't enough housing options available for all income levels, especially those houses in the middle of the housing market between affordable and the high end of the market. You know, just like we heard from Mark that racism is a public health emergency, lack of a robust housing market causes equity issues as well. Maura Collins from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency indicated that only 4% of Burlington's Black households own their home, and that dismal rate is barring too many from the largest source of wealth for middle-class Americans, which is home equity. So the racism and the equity issues that we just talked about from Mark are, you know, show up in terms of wealth and the housing market as well. We're doing many activities at CCRPC to address this. As Charlie indicated earlier, we're committed to furthering our understanding of the significant role land use and transportation policies and investments have had in racism and equity. So more specifically, we're working on our public participation plan to ensure that we have the best practices around the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and making sure that we're reaching out to these folks in an equitable way. And then more of our sort of routine and closer to our land use mission is implementing the ECO's Plan Strategy 2, which is striving for 80% of new development in an area's plan for growth, which amounts to 15% of our land area. And we do this through zoning projects, permit legislation, and planned transportation investments in those places. If we were in the main conference room, I would be pointing to a map right now, and that map will show up later on in the presentation so you can visualize what those areas planned for growth are. But those are areas where we have higher density, transportation, infrastructure, biking, walking, water, and wastewater. And then lastly, we have been working hard to implement the Building Homes Together campaign and raise awareness about the need for housing across all income levels in our municipalities. So this brings me to the data update for the Building Homes Together campaign. Total housing construction over the first 4 years of the campaign, it's a 5-year campaign, it has been 3,147 new homes. So that's really good news. We've been meeting the goal. So we're 90% of the way to the goal. The end goal is 3,500 homes out of the 5 years. So we're 10% ahead. For 2019, the county as a whole has generated 775 net homes. One of the other data points that we are looking at through the Building Homes Together campaign is the vacancy rate. A low vacancy rate means that housing is not available, and a healthy vacancy rate is that rate between 3 and 5%. And then, you know, on the ground, what the low vacancy rate means is that it's difficult to find a home for renters, and a good home at that. Sometimes they're in disrepair. Renters don't have a lot of choice. The long-term market vacancy rate in Chittenden County has been 1.8%. So we're still below a healthy vacancy rate. Affordable housing is a big piece of the Building Homes Together campaign. Out of in the entirety of the 4 years, 449 affordable homes have been built. And when I say affordable, I mean project-based affordable units that are built with federal subsidies. Also affordable homes that are built as a result of regulatory measures like inclusionary zoning, and also shared equity units from the Champlain Housing Trust. Those are not necessarily new units. They're units that have been added to the Champlain Housing Trust portfolio, but they are perpetually affordable and we are counting them. So we're lagging in the affordable housing goal. 449 units over the 4-year period is only 64% of the way there. So we still have 36% to go in 1 year. This current year that we're reporting on for 2019, 169 units were built. And that's a doubling from 2018, which was about 86 units. And that's a result of the $35 million housing for all bond passed in 2017 from the legislature. So we're really starting to see that take effect in 2019. So in terms of the ECO strategy and how we're implementing our ECOS plan in the year 2019, so this is just showing this last year, in terms of planning areas, we achieved 89% of new homes in areas planned for growth. So that's great news. The region met the eco strategy goal. The map on the left is showing where the houses are in the county, and the dots are proportional to the number of units at that particular location. And then the red dots that show up are housing demolition. So we're also tracking which housing developments are demolished for a variety of reasons. So the numbers that we're reporting are net units. And then looking at the 4 years of the BHT campaign, on average, we've been achieving 80% of growth in areas planned for growth. So again, good news, and 13% of that housing has been in rural areas. The green areas are the areas planned for growth. So again, that's where we're seeing a lot of our water and wastewater infrastructure, transportation, and higher densities. So just like I mentioned earlier about robust housing market, we need all different types of housing market to address the challenges that we have. So this is taking a look at the housing by type. So we are looking at accessory units, camps, group quarters. Group quarters are university housing. Sometimes it's also senior living and nursing homes. Multifamily. Multifamily is defined as units that are 2 or more. Mobile homes and single family. So these are the types of housing that we're seeing in the county. So just notice that asterisk down at the bottom, that 412 number under group quarters in Burlington compromises 304 UVM beds, 105 Champlain College apartments, and another boarding house in Burlington. So that brings us down to that 3,100 number that I reported earlier. And Burlington, has been, if you take out the 412 units of group quarters, Burlington has been leading that. The total number of housing units, but not by much. You know, it's on par with South Burlington and Williston and Essex Junction and Essex combined. So just, you know, scratching the surface with the planning areas and taking a deep dive, unpacking the planning areas a little bit. So this is the center planning area. These areas are intended to be regional centers or traditional downtowns that serve the county and beyond, and they contain a mix of jobs, housing, and community facilities. The center planning area is where we're going to see the highest densities in the county, which range from 7 to more than 60 dwelling units per acre. So, you know, the chart on the left breaks up the growth that we're seeing by municipality. Again, Burlington has led with 105 units. That's 39% of the units that were developed in the center planning area. You know, that makes sense. Burlington is our most dense municipality. The municipalities that have zeros associated with them, they're 0%. That's because the center planning area is not within any of those municipalities. The center planning area typically encompasses the state designated growth centers and new town centers and TIF districts. I apologize for the dog barking in the background, if you can hear it. So looking a little bit further out from the center planning area is the metro planning area. This is where local zoning is also accommodating jobs and housing in a compact development. It could be, the metro planning areas can be more suburban in nature, but there's a mix of uses, and the density usually ranges between 4 and 20 dwelling units per acre. So it can be a denser area, not as dense as the center planning area. Again, Burlington led on this as well. And then those municipalities that have zero associated with them also don't have a metro planning area in their municipality. The suburban area is the next planning area. South Burlington led on this one over the last 4 years. And then the enterprise planning area, typically we don't see a lot of residential development in this planning area. It's mostly a concentration of, you know, a large employer or a mix of employers. There's just a bit of an anomaly here with 2 units in Essex. And then looking at the village planning area, the village planning area is also a mix of uses, and this is where we'll see a lot of the state designated village centers, and the density can be anywhere from 0.2 to 4 units, depending upon if sewer is available. And Colchester led with the highest number of housing units across the 4 years. The rural planning area is the area where town plans promote working landscapes and natural features. This is typically the lowest density planning area in the county. There is also low density commercial, so it's not also residential. Typically that low density commercial is compatible with the working landscapes and the rural nature of this planning area. So Charlotte had the highest number of housing units in the 4-year period, with Essex Junction and St. George having some of the lowest. So going forward, typically around this time every year, the Building Homes Together campaign will release a press release talking about the findings from the 2019 update. So Champlain Housing Trust and Evernorth and CCRPC is currently working on what the message is. legislative actions to, strengthen housing investments going forward. And Charlie may have something to add to this slide as well. So I will turn it over to him.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to add beyond that. It was this process that kind of advocated for the affordable housing bond 4 years ago. So we're not sure yet if there will be a legislative agenda, but there certainly, we'll keep doing the work that we're doing with the municipalities in terms of our housing convenings, and I'm sure maybe the work on racial justice may also bring up some ideas of how we look at our housing work, particularly if there's exclusionary practices that we want to kind of work on with our towns. So anyway, any feedback, any reaction? We're doing fairly well on the number of housing units compared to our goal, but as Melanie noted, the vacancy rate is still not really that high. I will tell you that when we started this campaign, I was thinking that we should be shooting more for like 5,000 units, 1,000 units a year to impact the vacancy rate. And clearly doing 3,500 or, what are we at, 3,150, something like that now. It seems like a lot, but we have a lot of demand in this region for housing that is really not getting met still. I don't know that we've impacted. The other piece that we typically look at, which we don't have good data on yet, is what's happening in terms of people having to live outside our region and commute in. That percentage has been increasing over the time. So, which isn't helpful to our transportation, energy, climate, you name your other goals, environmental goals. So anyway, any feedback or reactions to what you saw from Melanie? And Melanie, you could probably stop sharing.
Okay. Hold on while I figure out where that is.
It's just the green screen button.
Okay.
Thank you. So just and heads up, there'll be a press announcement. I don't think we're going to do a press conference like we've done in previous years for some reason. That was a joke, bad COVID joke. So Mike, back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Melanie. Next item is committee member appointments. And on this, we're in good shape. The only opening we really have for a board member is I think there's one opening for the board development committee. If anyone is interested in joining that group, let Charlie or myself know. Otherwise, Catherine is still working to find someone that we've identified potentially for the disabled representation. Yeah, and I guess that's about it. So
I finally got the contact information I needed.
Yeah.
Because I had to go down a bunch of rabbit holes because I thought I had it. But then I finally got it. So
okay. So the list that was in the packet, if you're on it, assume that you're still in that position because you are now, I guess, technically appointed unless, am I doing this right, Charlie? Do I need the consensus of the board?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's weird wording. So
let me ask, is anyone got any?
Chair without objection, I guess, is how we have been doing it.
Okay. If anyone has an objection to the list of committee appointments, make your voice known now. Otherwise, we're going to go forward with it. Okay. Thank you. So everyone who's on a committee, you're still on that committee as is on the agenda or the packet. Next is the Town of Williston determination of energy compliance. Who's going to take this?
Taylor, are you plugged in and able to speak to this?
Sure thing, Charlie. I'm not super prepped. I didn't know you wanted me to do this, but I can certainly take the reins.
Wing it, Taylor.
Regina popped off, so I guess I'll step in. You folks saw in your packet that our PAC reviewed the town of Williston's enhanced energy plan a few months ago. The town of Williston addressed a few changes that our PAC requested to ensure that we can provide an affirmative determination of energy compliance, and the select board adopted that plan a few weeks ago. So our ask tonight is that this board provide that affirmative determination of energy compliance to the town of Williston.
Are there any comments or questions about the energy compliance? Eric, I don't know if you want to throw anything in for Williston?
Thanks, Charlie. I'll just say this was a about 2-year effort, and really thanks to your staff at CCRPC for all your assistance along the way. We had an energy task force that worked for the Planning Commission to draft this. And the Planning Commission took it over for the last year or so, had 2 hearings with the Select Board, and the Select Board adopted it as recommended by the Planning Commission. So overall, a good process. A lot of items in here. We'll certainly look to adopt them and implement them as we can over time, and money's always a factor. So I think it's a great plan, and the town's looking forward to having it in its comprehensive plan.
Thanks, Eric. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I take a motion. I think this is an action item. Take a motion.
I've got one, if I may, Michael.
Yeah.
It's Garrett. I wasn't clear in the document on the siting requirements for renewable energy. Did the town address those issues, or are they still to be addressed?
They were addressed, Garrett.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm done.
Are you looking for a motion to approve, Mike?
I'll move. This is Garrett.
Second. Dan, Karen?
Oh, I think Mike is frozen up.
Yeah, I was going to say, did we lose Mike?
I don't know, or he's sitting very still.
Very still.
Catherine, do you want to pick up the reins?
So we already had the motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes then.
Hi, this is Mike again. Sorry, Sue's computer died on me.
Well, you're back to the chair and executive director reports then.
Oh, perfect. Well, I guess the energy compliance passed that.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Sorry about that, everyone. So Charlie, go ahead with the executive director report, if you would.
Okay, so I had a handful of items on here. One, I've been having a budget and operations line on here for every meeting, just not knowing exactly how COVID might impact us. And fortunately, so far, knock on wood, the budget situation in the state budget for FY21 does not appear too negative for us. Probably a little bit of downside on the clean water work. But I'm not even sure that will directly affect our operations. So thankful to the legislators and to all the municipalities that have supported our work and support our budget with the state. So, and operationally, we are still predominantly working from home. There are a few staff that are going in a little bit of time as works for them. So our office is a little bit open, but not too much. Are any questions on either of those? Okay. Item B is just to let you know, this local government expense reimbursement program is something the legislature passed before they left in June. And we are helping our towns kind of get reimbursed for expenses that they've had. And actually the state is actually paying us to help the towns with that. So that was a nice program. It's just a few $1,000s, but and I don't think anybody's on that has those numbers in their head, but we, as you might expect, our towns had the largest number and amount of expenses. So I think we'll get a decent share of reimbursement back to our towns. Clean water service provider update. I can't remember if this was on the table last time we talked, but the DEC has indicated that they are going to propose us to be the provider for the direct to lake basin. And for those of you who are in different parts of Chittenden County, the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission is proposed to be the provider for the Winooski Basin. That covers about 40% of our county, but it covers about 100% of their region. And the Northwest Regional Planning Commission is going to be the provider for the Lamoille Basin, which covers a good chunk of our northern part of Chittenden County. The rules, there's rulemaking involved with that process, and DEC has been very good about including all of us proposed providers and other partner entities, so the watershed groups and the conservation districts, in the drafting of those rules. And right now we're in the process of looking at the draft rule. We finally just got the final draft last week. It's going to be an item of top of discussion at the Clean Water Advisory Committee at their October meeting. So that's the latest there. Just wanted to let you know, we did end up submitting a grant application to the Economic Development Administration to look at this idea of community rail, taking advantage of the rail cars that David Blittersdorf bought, but really looking at, is there a way to do transit-oriented development in a way to support some sort of rail service. So, and the other thing to know about that application is that Hula, who's the Russ Scully's, I'm not sure, company, I guess I'll call it, that bought Blodgett, is contributing 50% of the money towards this effort. That's about a $300,000 grant application. I don't know if we'll get it. This has been kind of a long shot type of thing anyway, but we will see. And I should also mention at this point, we all had another application into the Economic Development Administration to do a CEDS, a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. We've been doing one as a county with GBIC. There was some encouragement from EDA to fill in the rest of Vermont that doesn't have a CEDS. And so that includes Central Vermont, Addison, and Rutland regions, which were not a necessarily great natural region, but the four of us applied to EDA, and we did just find out, I think it was just in the last couple of days, right, Taylor, that we did get a grant award to do that work. And thank you to Taylor for herding the cats, and that was HERD, not HURT. But there was quite a bit of work to get that. So stay tuned, you'll hear more about that. Last item for me is just to let you know, a number of you I probably have already copied on appointments, but I have made the ask to the town managers and administrators to get on the select board, city council agendas to provide our annual report. I had my first one last night with Williston. I think Eric just popped off because he didn't want me to mention his name. So, so those are in process now. If you haven't seen an appointment for me, it means I haven't heard from your town yet. And I'll probably follow up, either with the town staff or with you to help me get that appointment. So that's all I have. Any questions? Sorry, I just covered quite a bit there. It's almost 8 o'clock. You're at the wall. Got it. Mike, we can't hear you. Mike's on the other computer where the microphone doesn't work.
Dear,
Catherine, you're in charge again.
oh dear. And I keep blinking out, the video keeps like, oh dear. So committee and liaison activities and reports are in your packet.
Yeah.
And the next is future agenda topics.
Yeah, I just mentioned we have Secretary Flynn coming next month. We'll look at the FTA Title VI program for the first time and get an update on 89. So we talked about some other things, but next month, apologies to those, is all transportation. So,
They all kind of fit together anyway.
yeah.
Do we have any members, items, or other business? Well, it doesn't look like anything's happening, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Garrett.
So one is a second and one is a move then. Because it was Garrett and Don.
Whichever.
Garrett and Don, okay, thank you.
Wait, there was several together. Did you get that, Amy?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Yeah.
Bye.
All.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
It was excellent.
It was
good night.
good meeting.